Welcome to another episode of The Blank Canvas, a project brought to you by Plinko Solutions, focused on bridging accessibility around AI and business infrastructure. Really enjoying how this is taking shape. If you're new to this series, highly recommend checking it out. Got a full playlist in terms of how this all works. For today, let's talk mathematics, probabilities. The past few pieces that I've shared have been really about architecture, specifically around how systems build on top of each other based on our relational understanding of how we coexist within that, which is really important, especially when we start drawing on probability, because now we're looking, especially when it comes to offer ideation and the journey component specifically, what is the likelihood that people continue to progress along that story? So, with good inspiration from this channel, I'm going to butcher this name, Veritasium, talking about the strange math that predicts almost anything. It's the law of big numbers, or large numbers, I think is the exact term. I don't think they say big numbers. The law of large numbers, speaking about specifically how over a set point of volume, independent or dependent events have a average probability over time, right? For those unfamiliar with the Markov chain, we do a quick little 101. Again, I am no mathematician by any stretch of imagination, but here's how it kind of works. You know what? Let's do this. Explain Markov chain like I'm 12 using mermaid diagrams. For those unfamiliar, I'm using Cluey in the bottom left. You can do this for any language model, anything else. For our sake and purpose, I'm going to take you through it. So let's take this diagram, throw it on top of this. Perfect. So let me take you through it. Here's how it looks. So within these different states, these different events, right? States is just kind of like a temporal event or activity. That makes sense? Existing within a set time frame. The idea in the real world, outside of the theory side, is that states are often dependent on each other. So if it's sunny today, there's a certain probability that it will be sunny tomorrow. If it's rainy today, there's a certain probability that it will be rainy tomorrow. That's what this is illustrating. So if it's sunny today, there is an 80% chance that it will be sunny tomorrow. There's also a 20% chance it'll be rainy tomorrow. This is dependent, right? It's dependent on weather patterns, clouds, all that fun stuff. If it is rainy today, there's a 40% chance it will be rainy tomorrow, depending how much rain there is to begin with, right? There's also a 60% chance it will be sunny, because there is more sun than there is rain in the world. And I'm not going to dive too deep in terms of like the calculation and like the whole mathematics behind it. This is just to illustrate the theory, right? So how does this apply in the actual real world business utility? Take you to it. So the 7-11-4 rule, brought to you by Google, Qasim Aslam, is speaking about the different kind of touch points that people need in order to build trust with you. This is done through engagement. This is done through, like I mentioned, touch points, right? So actually giving them something, taking them through this experience so they can understand what is happening more and more. What I'll be doing actively is mapping this out, specifically for the AI and automation space, because I don't see it being done unless it's catering you towards an information product, which is not on my current plate. I would rather introduce more of an implementation service in order to do that, because I feel like that will drive the most revenue and the most output. But if you are interested in this, starting the information side, happy to kind of structure that and make sense of it for you. So taking that into account, this is the very simple bare bone, not taking the 11 touch points, and it's just kind of outlining where the probability and how this kind of law of large numbers work. So say we begin. Often it's a prospect more than a lead, someone who's just interested. There's a 30% chance they kind of just stay there. There's a 60% chance that they can become qualified, right? We do that through funnels, through engagement, through those touch points, right? We can increase this number by increasing the trust within this one bridge. There's a 30% chance those qualified people go back into just being a prospect, being a lead. There's a 20% chance those qualified folks just stay in that same little bubble, kind of just stay there. And then there's a 50% chance that qualified people actually pay and move forward and considered a closed one deal. Out of the people that make it to the stage, there is the often long tail of the I want to say 1-to-1 that kind of come back as a new lead that you can then qualify for new prospects. If they have success with you before, the probability of them repeating this cycle with you happily is often there. And that's the idea. That's what we want to look for. So let's expand this. Increase this, incorporating the 7-11-4 rule playbook. And let's throw on the search feature to do it live. And create a Markov chain that builds trust throughout the sales funnel. Now again, it's not so important, I mentioned this earlier, about the prompting, but more so the thinking process. And that's often what I'm working to relay here, is there are frameworks that allow you to understand how to operate and kind of maneuver within a space. I realize my framing on that is probably terrible. Let's hope it picks it up. I will say one thing with Cluely is it's not the smartest of LLMs, but I do enjoy the UI and the ease of it, being able to kind of hit Control Enter versus throw ChatGPT on the side and that whole side of things. I feel like I might have confused it, but it's searching. There we go. Perfect. Wow, amazing. So boom. It's interesting. They got these kind of these matrices set up. Let's see how this works. I don't know if this is going to come out clean. Nope, I didn't think so. Turn this into a mermaid diagram. Get rid of the search. There we go. Beautiful. So all that did is really extend that lead funnel into 3 more. Let's see what comes out of this. There we go. This looks like a decent hot mess. Let's break it down. So what it's suggesting here is that a prospect, somebody has no idea about your business, unaware, problem unaware, solution unaware, they have a 30% chance, if they engage with you, to stay within that. If they're engaged within you though, all right, and they're moving along that 60% to that engagement step, 20% of those folks kind of fall back in line because it's just another thing they're scrolling by, just moving on. 30% of those folks kind of stay in that bubble because they're still making sense of it, they're comprehending, they're processing, they're analyzing. 50% of the people that go there move into a bit of a trust layer with you. Now this trust layer is really interesting because this really is dependent on marketing more than it is sales. That's why I kind of I put 2 at the front because marketing and sales often is the leg that moves somebody along the deal flow in order to actually, use the product. Anyway, so within that trust piece, if you're doing your job well, 70% of them move forward to qualified. But the average over time, you're going to have a 20% kind of staying within that and then a 10% kind of falling back. It's just by the nature, right? So part of the reason of showing this is when we actually build these live and we have these percentages working in real time, there are people that can, I'll frame it like this. It's really cool to look at this kind of lost piece as well. We think that we can control averages and numbers. You can only provide direction and you can provide opportunity to do so. And then you just funnel volume, right? Volume is the real prescription and the real teacher of what needs to actually happen. Volume will show you how to turn this qualified, 70% going through here and push 50% towards close and have that 20% kind of, bring you feedback loops to work with. And like I mentioned, that 1-to-1 ratio, if they like you successfully, they'll come back and they'll do it all again. So sometimes if you're really lucky, I guess that 30% goes straight from prospect to qualified. So people already have trust with you. They already like what you're talking about. They like the way you're framing things. And that's ultimately what I'd like to do with this kind of top of funnel approach. So why is this important? Cut the music for a bit for a dramatic effect. Let me show you why. So probability theory, some people are kind of like, okay, that makes sense. Like, sure, things happen on averages. how does that apply to us? Like, why does that matter? And I kind of hinted towards it a little bit. So let me show you here. So when it comes to frequency, right, and things kind of going up over time with volume, we have a lot of inner narrative around how we can associate our actions around how we influence those probabilities. Part of the nature of dependent states is that they're constantly shifting, they're constantly moving. In the example of, with there's a video I'll drop below with Veritasium, where he explains the Markov chain. He talks about nuclear fission. Nuclear fission works in a very simplistic way that, the way I'm going to explain it is going to be simplistic. It doesn't work simply at all. But anyways, the idea is you have these set of neurons, and once they actually split, there's a probability that either it will travel, it will absorb itself, or it will break another kind of neuron and create this sort of nuclear fission effect where it's constantly breaking new things and averaging out to kind of build. So the way they kind of mapped it out is that over 1,000, call it fission pieces where like it breaks apart. Out of those 1,000, let me make this a little less troublesome here. All right, screw it. We'll go with this. So out of 1,000, right? The ones that they found that over time, right, the probability of it actually happening starts to increase as it kind of climbs. Color here, as it starts to climb up and up and up, and then when it's around like the 1.5 point, there's an exponential jump where when you have this and something is like, if you do enough of those kind of nuclear fission breakages, you have a exponential climb of chained reactions. Keynote, chained. When I spoke yesterday about architecture, I was speaking a lot about prompt chains and how that kind of works when it comes to browser agents. In the same way, when you do enough LLM conversing and, working and talking to AI, you find new ways to instruct it. You do enough frequency, enough volume, 1.5 times the average, one would say. And when you do 1.5 times the average, you have this exponential return on investment, essentially. You have that ticking bomb. You have that prompt chain that actually will grow. And this is the same principle. This is how search engines work. This is how predictability, probability, all this stuff, if you're interested, highly recommend checking out the video that Veritasium did. Really incredibly in-depth. But yeah, that's mathematics. So with that in account, taken to note as well, as we venture forward into sort of, throw the big camera back, into the free market, the business side of like actually getting responses, the framework in which we understand that is really important, right? That's part of the process of building in live, is walking you through that. So I felt it was really cool to kind of just, show you that it's really less about self-importance and more about feedback. It's important to kind of understand that as we're designing funnels. So that being said, catch you guys in the next one.